Ladies and gentlemen, for about 18 months on this YouTube channel, since the very start of 2024, I have raised attention to the $130,000 region for Bitcoin and said that could be the potential all-time high in this bull market, or at the very least, it's a very important resistance level that Bitcoin will face in this bull market. And as time ticks on, as we get closer and closer to the end of the cycle, it looks as though that $130,000 level is actually gaining viability as a potential top zone. Now, before you go into the comments and type, oh, $130,000 is your prediction and it's too low and all this, it's not my prediction. I don't think we have enough concrete data on Bitcoin to make a price prediction. It is merely a level of interest. It is a level that I see many indicators pointing towards, many independent indicators pointing towards, and I have seen that for 18 months straight. And for that reason, I do think it's interesting, and I do think we need to look at it. Now, I've heard your concerns, I've heard your questions. A lot of people think that target is too low, and I'll address that directly today. I'll look into the broad 4-year cycle itself and actually really go into it. Go into why the 4-year cycle is not just a coincidence specifically, because there's a lot of doubts about that as well in this cycle specifically, given how weird this cycle has been so far. I'll look into the target of $130,000 itself. I'll look into what I said before, why I'm not confident saying it's a prediction. It's not a prediction, it's merely a level of interest. But it is a level of interest that looks like it's growing in validity over time as we get closer towards the cyclical deadline. And I'll finally leave you with a visualization, because all of those previous things I've kind of done before, but with this visualization, I think it becomes a lot more realistic to put it into your mind. I'll also dive into the short-term charts, look into what's going on recently, and why this 130k target is looking more viable as time goes on. Guys, without further ado, we'll get into it. I kind of lied there. We're not going to get into it just yet. Just give me 30 seconds of your time here. The Bitunix Exchange, a global non-KYC exchange. You can sign up from anywhere in the world with very little regional restrictions. So pretty much global in that sense. And that's very good because regulatorily speaking, it's not really that common nowadays to have a global exchange, especially one that has never been hacked before. It's never had a single security breach. And it's also got very low trading fees and all of the market pairs you'd expect with a regular major exchange. So this is my pick for an exchange. I use it personally and predominantly. And with my referral link down below, you can sign up and get a 15% trading fee discount attached to your account for life, as well as up to $8,000 in USDT in rewards if you're lucky. So use that link down below, get those rewards and get those discounts. Help out the channel, help out yourself. Let's get into the content. The 4-year cycle, I speak about it so much, I'll keep it brief, is all Bitcoin has known. We've never seen price action outside of the 4-year cycle on Bitcoin. It started in 2012, and ever since then, it has marked every single top and bottom on Bitcoin in a larger umbrella date range trend. Within this date range trend, there are 6 micro trends, all of which are independently verifiable, all of which are independently strong. 5 of them are very strong. One of them is quite speculative, but still 5 very strong independent date range trends within this larger umbrella trend. They all point to around October, right? Between early October and mid-November. That is the region which we're looking for Bitcoin to top. Now, if you want to validate the 4-year cycle, all you need to do is go to a chart and think about how unrealistic this would have to be for it to be a coincidence. Take any one of these trends on the side of the screen here. For example, the trend of 1,064 days from bottom to top. Let's go ahead and just do that quickly, right? 1,064 days from bottom to top. So here's the bottom right here. 1,064 days later, we had the top. Here's the bottom again. 1,064 days later, we had the top once more, okay? For that to be a coincidence alone would be, we're talking in the single percentages, right? Very, very low likelihood of that being a coincidence. Furthermore, we can take another trend and layer it on top of this, the 1,400 days from top to top trend, and we can see 1,400 days from top to top, there it is right there, 1,400 days from top to top, there it is right there again. You know, at this point, we've got 2 independently verifiable factors saying that there is a certain distance between tops and bottoms and bottoms, and the chances of that being a coincidence, in my view, goes downwards to below 1%. And then all you need to do is add the 3 extra strong trends on top of that. And yeah, okay, independently, you know, by themselves, or even maybe with 2 of them, you know, it's not very strong. It's not very valid. You know, there's room for movement there. But with 5 of them layered on top of each other, all vaguely saying the same thing and giving the same price range and giving the same date range, not price range, within about 30 days, you end up in a situation where you have basically irrefutable cyclical trends, I should say. And yes, they are still developing. You know, some of these trends only have 2 data points, but having 2 data points with both data points having the pretty much identical amount of days layered on top of another 5 independent factors, that's a trend. So all of this is to say, and I haven't really gone through and actually got into the nitty-gritty of the 4-year cycle for a while, so I figured that was justified, even though I talk about it quite a lot. All of this is kind of to say that around October this year, you know, give or take, is going to be the top as per the cycle. Now, the cycle can break, of course. It will break eventually. But again, it's a trend that has lasted since 2012 so far, and to assume that it will break this time, that assumption that people have made in prior cycles has been wrong to a factor of 100%. So, you know, this time is different. That kind of saying that people have, this time's different, this time's different. Very, very rarely are they correct. And for that reason, I'm going to be holding on to the 4-year cycle until it's proven otherwise. And it won't be hard to prove it otherwise. All we need to do is keep pushing past October or November, and then it's done, right? We won't even really have to lose money in holding this prediction. So, pointing back to what I've kind of concluded there, the October top is quite likely, and that holds us puts us into a pretty interesting position, because there's not much time until October, right? If we're speaking late October, which is when it's most likely to happen, it's very hard to be precise, but late October is probably where we're looking at. Okay, we're talking only about a period of, let's just go ahead and take a look, a period of about 130 days, so basically 4 months, not very long at all. And with Bitcoin still stuffing about here in the short term, and actually recently losing a level it just flipped yesterday, a level that I thought was going to be quite influential, and unfortunately it wasn't. We lost it straight away. You know, we're still kind of knocking about, not really doing much here in the short term. The probability of a correction downwards is still very much on the table. We could go downwards to something like 96,000 or 93,000 before we go back up again. That's very possible, right? Or we could go up right now, but either way, it's very much on the table that Bitcoin could take another month or maybe a month and a half to get out of this current macro range. Hopefully it moves upwards sooner than that. But the point is, we're not really rich with time here until the end of the cycle. And if we're assuming the cycle will hold, which is, I think, a reasonable assumption to make until proven otherwise, the lack of time that Bitcoin has until the end of the cycle means that the ceiling for how high Bitcoin could go has to be lowered and made quite conservative. And so the potential target of 130,000 seems to make more and more sense the longer Bitcoin does nothing here. Because the longer Bitcoin does nothing, the less time we have left, the lower the price ceiling is, essentially, if we're going to maintain within that cycle without extending. And at this point, we don't really have any reason to believe it should be extended or will be extended. You know, we could be proven otherwise. We could be proven wrong later in the cycle. You know, if we go past November and we still haven't topped, awesome. We'll recalibrate our predictions from there. But that just hasn't happened yet. And so at this point in time, lower price targets, like 130,000, for example, are very much becoming not only more valid, but just more believable. Let's take a step back here. How do I even come to the price target of $130,000 in the first place? Again, just want to clarify my wording. When I say price target, I'm simply meaning an area of resistance that is being pointed to by various independent indicators, not necessarily my prediction. I don't have a prediction. But anyway, I think we've done enough clarity on that. Look, we've got an angle-based channel right here. We've got 3 things, but this is one of them. An angle-based logarithmic regression channel, and every cycle from top to top and bottom to bottom, the angle of incline halves on both sides. So we have 28, we have 27, sorry, we have 13.5, we have 6.5, okay? We have 29, we have 15, we have 7.5, right? So it's basically halving every time. And I can make these numbers more precise if I zoomed in and really took the attention to do it, but you'll have to take my word for it. I've done this many times in this channel, and you can go cross-check it for yourself. Every cycle, these angles of incline essentially half, more or less. And if that is going to be extrapolated forward, which is what we can generally expect, given the fact that this is a pretty concrete trend at this point, well, what we would be seeing in the October deadline for the end of the cycle is Bitcoin reaching $130,000. Now, just like the cycle, this channel can certainly break to the upside, and if it does, I will expect a massive move to the upside because we'll be breaking a channel we've held since 2013. That would be excellent. But again, it's the trend is your friend until it ends. It's that whole thing of the trend is your friend until it ends. And for this reason, if the trend was not to end, which is what would be expected generally, given the fact that it is a trend, we would be reaching $130,000 in October. That's the first thing. The second thing is this ascending resistance and support line right here, which goes back from 2011. It's the longest price chart line that Bitcoin has, the oldest one that Bitcoin has. And if we zoom in, you can see that every interaction with this line, pretty much without fail, has been influential. Now, it's not perfect, but you can see these interactions that I'm circling. They have been very clearly valid. It's a very clearly valid line for support and resistance. It's beyond the point of coincidence. Every single interaction, without fail, even during the panic of the COVID drop, has reacted to this line. The only real exception, was over here in 2022. It got a bit messy, but even then, it recalibrated, and we found support and resistance on it once again. That's at resistance right now. Now, this line goes upwards, and guess where it ends up in October? It ends upwards in October, the end of October, around 130,000, okay? In that 130,000, $137,000 region. It's that vague region again coming up independently. These are two independent charts. Another one, we have the logarithmic power law chart on Bitcoin. Now, I'm not looking at the purple line. The purple line was previously relevant in cycles like 2021, where it actually lost validity. And for that reason, a lot of people stopped looking at this chart. But I kept looking at it because I found this green line quite interesting. In fact, the green line on this chart was the only line to represent resistance or show resistance in early 2024 when we topped out briefly at 74,000. We also found resistance there again late in 2024 and early this year, and we're finding resistance there again right now. And guess what? That line in late October will be at around 134,000. So we have three independent indicators pointing to 134,000 or 130-ish thousand. On top of that, formulas that I personally crafted, these formulas are old now. They're from back in January 2024 when I first came to these conclusions about 130K. They point to a median of 130K as well. So quite a lot points to 130K, much more than what points to any other price. And for that reason, I'm not sitting here and saying we're going to top out at 130K, and I'm not actually predicting it at all. I don't feel confident in making a prediction based on this amount of evidence. I just don't. But what I can say is this: if, and there is an if there, if the cycle remains, and if we do top out in October, right? And if that's going to be implied here, if we're just assuming we're going to top out in October and the cycle will remain, which is not a ridiculous assumption because it's what's happened every single time, but it is an assumption. If that assumption is being made, the longer we creep towards October without doing anything here, the more likely a low price target like 130,000 will become validated. That's just the simple truth. And if you actually go ahead and visualize this, and this is what I haven't done before on the channel, you visualize 130,000. I know it sounds very low, it sounds quite pathetic, but if you visualize the end of October, October 27th, in fact, it could be back at the start of October, but let's just say the end of October, in fact, let's just say early November, just to really push it further. This is where 130,000 is. And, as we've indicated via that 11-year long support line or resistance line, could be in the high 130K region. So let's say 137,000, right? That doesn't look like a ridiculous target at all. In fact, if you're sitting here saying, oh, we're going to reach 200K by October, that's a ridiculous target, because look at what Bitcoin would have to do. Just visualize it in your head to get to that price. It would literally have to do this, okay? It would literally have to rise like that, right? That's more than $1,000 a day or around that. That's ridiculous. All of a sudden, in a not very, intense technical analysis visualization, it's very basic and rudimentary, in fact, but in this visualization, you can kind of just see, okay, that's actually quite reasonable for a final leg to the upside. It seems to make sense, especially if the breakout only happens. Let's say the breakout only happens a month from now. Makes even more sense. And if the breakout happens a month from now and we top out in early October, both of which are very possible things, I mean, it's pretty much lines up with the angle of incline we've seen in every move this cycle so far. So if we move tomorrow, right? If we say Bitcoin just randomly pumps and blasts off tomorrow, right? Then maybe we have a serious chance of getting to a higher price target, like 150, 160, right? Then that's very much on the table. But the longer we drag out this consolidation, the more reasonable a target like 130,000, which sounds quite underwhelming in our heads, but when we visualize it, the more reasonable that actually becomes. So I'm not really sitting here, as I said yesterday, making predictions. I don't feel comfortable doing that when it comes to such a major thing like the bull market top price, especially given all the uncertainty and all the weird stuff that's happened in the market so far this cycle. But I just want to kind of ground people in reality a bit. I think that, there's a segment of the people here who obviously are quite bearish unjustifiably, because we are still in the 4-year cycle and we have not broke down from the macro range. If we break below something like 93,000, then that bearishness is justified, but right now it's really not. That's kind of a small segment, but I think a larger segment of people are unjustifiably overly bullish. And, you know, I've seen this before. We saw it in 2021, we saw it in 2017, and it only gets worse when you start moving upwards. So just kind of ground yourself in reality. These lower price targets like 130,000, although they might sound underwhelming, they're actually very plausible. And I suppose I just wanted to bring that to your attention, especially now that we're seeing this intense consolidation and pushing towards the end of the cycle. You know, I don't rule out the possibility of something like an altcoin season if we did see only a small move to 130, right? That could still very much happen. You know, that would still be Bitcoin from the macro range breakout to the target of, say, the high 130s. That's still a 20% move on Bitcoin. You know, if we look back to 2018, we saw the vast majority of altcoins movement, right? Ethereum, for example, performed the best after Bitcoin had topped out, right? So we could even see a 2018 type thing where Bitcoin tops out in October at 130 and altcoins keep running for a month aggressively, right? So it's not like 130 ruins all our hopes and dreams. An altcoin season would still very much be possible even under that conservative price target. But guys, thank you for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed. Again, I'll mention the Bitunix Exchange. It's global, non-KYC. If you appreciate the content and if you want a good exchange to be on that you can access from anywhere in the world that's never had a security breach before, you can check out Bitunix. Okay, with my 15% trading fee discount that you can find below, you'll get access to a great exchange at a very low trading fee rate permanently. You'll be helping out the channel and you'll be helping out yourself. So use that link down below to sign up. I appreciate that. Guys, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you tomorrow.